tool. First, the tool is a Microsoft Excel macro-enabled workbook file with a .xlsm file extension designed for offline use. It contains printable templates for the IPCRF Parts 1 to 4, as well as an encoding form that collects data for COT and IPCRF QET ratings, and data for core behavioral competencies. So who will be using this tool? There are two types of users, the rater and the ratee. For the purposes of this presentation, I've simplified the flowchart, taking out all the steps that don't necessarily involve the electronic tool while still following the procedures we previously set. First, the rater downloads the IPCRF electronic tool, encodes the ratee's data, then encodes the COT and QET ratings. At this point, the rater hands the electronic tool to the ratee, who encodes parts 2 and 4, then gives the file back to the rater or to the school head for submission online. We've identified 5 major steps, each involving several activities. We'll discuss each step in the process, except for the submission, which will be discussed in a different session. Let's begin with downloading. First, let's slip into the role of the rater. Here are the activities for step 1, download and extract. The first thing we must do as a rater is to download a copy of the new IPCRF electronic tool. Keep in mind that the versions that you may have obtained prior to May 4 should no longer be used. The system will not accept them. If you obtained a copy of the tool recently, ensure you have the version with the proficient tool that has automatic ratings of 5 in Objective 10. Any version other than that is no longer valid. So where does one download the tool? You can find the tool by opening this link, which takes you to a Google Drive folder. In there, you will find a zip named Deped Prescribed IPCRF Parts 1 to 4 SY 2019 to 2020. Simply right-click on the file and click Download. When you have downloaded the zip file, you must then extract the Excel file from inside it. It is important that you remember, and I recommend you emphasize this when you cascade to the field, that you should not open the IPCRF Excel tool without first extracting it. In the past, some users have complained that they cannot edit or save the Excel tool, or that the data they encoded is lost after saving and closing Excel. That was probably due to this missed step. In Windows, it is easy to identify a zip file. These 3 icons are examples of how it looks like. The first one is when you do not have a file compression software installed, such as WinRAR or 7-zip. The default icon in Windows is a folder with a zipper. In some cases, the file may look like the last 2 icons, a stack of books bundled together with a belt. To extract a zip file in Windows, assuming you don't have a file compression software installed, there are generally 2 methods. I'll quickly show you how to do it using the two methods so it's clear to everybody, as well as offer you suggestions of how you can cascade this to the field. The first one is to right-click on the file and then selecting or clicking Extract All. This opens the default extraction tool in Windows. Simply select the destination or leave it as is and click the Extract button. This will create a new Excel file outside the zip. You can then open this Excel file. For the second method, you can do this by opening or double-clicking the zip file. This does not open any other program or window. It opens in the same File Explorer window and looks as if you've just opened a regular folder with a single file in it. But do not be fooled, you are still inside the zip file. Notice the Extract menu in pink at the top of the window. This tells you the view is of a compressed folder. This is when some users make the mistake of opening the Excel file. I'll remind you again that you should not open it before extracting it. To extract it, you can drag and drop the file into the desktop to create a copy of the tool. You can also copy and paste the file from here, or you can click the Extract All menu at the top, which is similar to the method A, which I showed you earlier. For Mac users, double-clicking or opening the zip file should automatically extract the Excel tool. Now that we've downloaded the IPCRF electronic tool, let's proceed to the second step, which is to encode the ratees data. Here are the activities for step 2, opening the Excel IPCRF electronic tool, enabling editing, enabling macros, encoding the school's data, encoding the raters data, making copies, and encoding the ratees data. To begin, we need to open the Excel file. When opening the IPCRF electronic tool, here are a few things you need to remember. You must open it on a laptop, tablet, or desktop PC running Windows or Mac OS. You cannot open the tool using any kind of mobile phone, tablets running Android or Windows RT, the iPad or Chromebooks, and other laptops running Windows RT. In addition to the types of compatible devices, here is a list of the programs and apps you can and cannot use to open the IPCRF electronic tool. You can open the tool using the desktop app of the Microsoft Office Excel with the following versions. For Windows, it's 2010 and 2013. For both Windows and the Mac, it's 2016, 2019, and Office 365. Note, you should not use the online or web versions of Microsoft Excel because macros aren't supported. You also cannot use these programs. If you are on a Mac, do not open with Numbers or older Office or Mac apps, versions 2004, 2008, or 2011. Furthermore, you should not use Google Sheets or any other Microsoft Office alternatives such as WPS Office, LibreOffice, or OpenOffice. Note that if you open the IPCRF tool with any of the apps in the Don't column, in other words, not Excel, the tool is forever broken and you need to download a new copy. Again, it's important that you emphasize this when cascading to the field. There were cases reported that the macros don't work. The reason it turned out was because they were not using Microsoft Excel. If you are sure that your device and your app are compatible, you can then open the tool. When the tool is opened, Excel automatically puts the file in protected view for security reasons. It does this for files downloaded from the internet. Notice the yellow bar that says Protected View below the ribbon. You need to click the Enable Editing button so you can begin editing the file. Otherwise, it will remain disabled in Protected View. On the Mac, it's more straightforward. Excel will greet you with a dialog box with an alert asking whether to enable or disable editing. Just click Enable Editing. After enabling editing, you also need to enable the macros, which are disabled by default. Click the Enable Content button to allow macros. Failure to do so means that Excel won't be able to run the custom code that makes the IPCRF tool work. On the Mac, again, Excel will greet you with a dialog box with an alert asking whether to enable or disable the macros. Click Enable Macros. In Windows, if you do not see the Enable Content button in the yellow bar below the ribbon, it does not necessarily mean that the macros are already enabled. After confirming that they are disabled, for example, when an error message is shown saying so after clicking a button, you need to perform this suggested workaround. In the ribbon, click the File menu. In the available options in the vertical panel to the left, find Options. It is usually found at the bottom. Try to scroll down the vertical panel if you do not see it. Click it when you find it. This opens the Excel Options dialog box. On the panel to the left, find and click the Trust Center option, usually found at the bottom of the list. In the Trust Center, find and click the Trust Center Settings button. The Trust Center dialog box opens. In the panel to the left, find and click the Macro Settings. Under Macro Settings, click Enable All Macros. Ensure that the radio button for the Enable All Macros option is activated, then click the OK button. This closes the Trust Center dialog box. and returns you to the Excel Options dialog box, and just click the OK button again. Close all open Excel workbooks and reopen the IPCRF tool to apply the changes. Now, assuming you have enabled the macros, you should now be ready to encode the ratee and raters data into the form. But before that, I'd like to take a little detour. Let's look at the different parts of the tool so it makes sense to you when you encode data later. This Excel workbook has 4 usable tabs or sheets. You can usually find the sheets at the bottom of the Excel window. The electronic tool has the templates for all the parts of the IPCRF, each on its own tabs. These are the Part 1 to 4 tabs. But the first tab you'll see when you open the tool is the Encoding tab. Here are the properties of each tab. For the Encoding tab, it is editable because it contains the data collection form. It is also protected, which means you cannot modify this sheet. Only white cells are editable. This form is also non-printable. For parts 1, 2, and 3, they all have the same properties. They are all not editable because all data that are needed for these parts are encoded in the Encoding tab. They are all protected and not editable and printable. The Part 4 tab is editable but also not protected to allow the users to make any necessary changes for crafting the development plans. And of course, it's printable. Let's focus on the Encoding tab. Part 1, and just below that is Part 2. Let's go back to the top. Now, let's proceed to the next step, which is encoding the school's data. Here is the part where you need to encode the school's information. There are several fields. First is region. Region field is a drop-down option with the following options available. The second field is division, which is another drop-down box whose options depend on the selected region. Next is district and/or municipality, school ID, which only accepts 6 digits school IDs from 100,000 to 699,999. Next is school name. We recommend you input the complete and proper name of the school. Next is school type, which is another drop-down option between urban and rural. Next is school size, which is a drop-down box for small, medium, large, or very large. And the last field for the school's information is curricular classification. Here are the choices. Note that the choice you select in the curricular classification field will affect choices that will be available in the preceding parts of the tool, specifically the level taught, grade level taught, and subject level taught. Next, we encode the raters data, which contains only 3 fields. First is the rater's name, and we recommend you use this format: last name, comma, first name, and then the middle initial. Next field is the position, which is a drop-down option between these positions. And the last field is date of review, which accepts date from February 2020 and onwards using this format. At this point in time, this field is not required. You only need to encode the date of review when finalizing Part 1. Okay, after finishing encoding the school's information and the rater's information, you need to save the Excel workbook and then close it. What we've done so far is basically make a template. Remember, the rater is doing this. He or she must prepare all the IPCRF files for each of the teacher that he or she will be rating. Suppose I need to prepare the IPCRF tool for one teacher. I will just duplicate the template that I've created and then rename the duplicate to include the name of the ratee or the teacher that I will be rating. Then I will open that file. Now, don't forget to enable editing and enable macros for this step. You need to do that every time you open the IPCRF tool. Now let's proceed to the next step, encoding the ratee's data. Here are the fields that you need to accomplish. There are several fields. Let's begin with the name of the employee. Again, we recommend you use the format that you used for the rater field. Last name, comma, first name, and then middle initial. Next, you select the position, which is a drop-down option between Teachers 1 to 3, Sped Teacher 1 to 5, Master Teachers 1 to 4, and Special Science Teachers 1 to 5. Remember that when you change the position, or when you change the data for this field, it also changes the form. For example, if you select a position that uses the proficient form, Part 1 for this tool changes accordingly. If you select, for example, Master Teacher, the form will change into the highly proficient form. Now you will know that the form has changed by looking at the background color. It will turn green for the proficient form, blue for the highly proficient form. Next, the employee ID number, employment status, which is a drop-down option, age, sex, which are also drop-down options. Next is level taught. The options available here will depend on the selected curricular classification under the school's information. As I mentioned earlier, whatever you selected in the curricular classification will determine the options that will be available here. For example, if I selected in the curricular classification kindergarten to grade 6, the options that will be available here will be kindergarten and elementary. If, however, I chose kindergarten to grade 10 in the curricular classification, the options that will be available in the level taught field will be kindergarten, elementary, and junior high school, and so on. Next is grade level taught. This option depends again on the selected level taught. For example, if I've selected elementary in the level taught, the options that will be available here will be kindergarten to grade 6. If I chose junior high school, the options that will be available here will be grade 7 to 10, and so on. If you've selected else in the subject taught, which is the next field, the grade level taught field will be disabled. Next is the subject taught, which is a list or a drop-down list of all the subjects. This field changes to strand if you've selected senior high school in level taught. Then we have number of years in teaching, highest degree obtained, and area of specialization, which are all drop-down options. We now have completed step 2. Let's proceed to the next step, encoding of part 1, the COT and IPCRF QET ratings. Here are the activities involved, COT ratings, QET ratings, and then finally finalizing part 1. So here, let's go back to the encoding tab and let's look at part 1. Below the rater's information or the ratee's information, we have 4 COT columns. Let's focus on the first one. At the beginning, all COT columns are disabled except for COT1. Now you will know that this is enabled because you have a cell at the top that's colored white. This allows you to select a drop-down option from among the identified subjects. Once you select a subject, the rating column will be enabled. Again, you will confirm that the column or the cells are enabled because they have turned white. For the proficient form, this column will accept values from 3 to 7. For the highly proficient form, it will accept values 4 to 8. The second column, the RPMS 5-point scale, will be automatically populated based on the input on the rating column. After inputting the rating, you need to input the date of observation at the bottom. This field accepts dates beginning June 3, 2019 using this format. After entering the date of observation, the rater will then click the Lock COD1 button, which prompts for the rater's password. The rater will then nominate or set a password with minimum 6 characters. This password will be used later when locking other COT columns and finalizing Part 1, so it's important that the rater must not forget this. After confirming the password, the rater will click the Go button. This locks COT1 and enables COT2. A little reminder, COT columns are disabled until the previous COT has been locked. For example, when COT1 was locked, COT2 is enabled. In other words, you must input the COT ratings sequentially from COT1, 2, 3, and 4. Note that COT columns are not required, meaning if you do not have data for a particular COT column, you do not need to input them. Next, after finishing encoding of COT ratings, we then encode the QED ratings. It's at this part right here. Notice that we have some colored cells. You only need to input on the white cells. These cells accept whole numbers from 1 to 5. Input the ratings for the QET columns. After that, we need to finalize Part 1. And to do that, we must input the date of review back in the rater's information. As I've said earlier, this field is not required until finalizing Part 1. After entering the date of review, input the approving authority, name, and position. Then, the rater will click Finalize Part 1 button, which prompts for the rater's password that was previously set. Input the rater's password and click Go. This locks Part 1. You will confirm that Part 1 has been finalized because the background color has turned red. At this point, the rater transfers the file to the ratee. So, we've completed steps 1, 2, and 3, and now let's discuss the last one, encoding of parts 2 and 4 by the ratee. Okay, here are the steps involved. Let's begin with finalizing Part 2. Back in the Encoding tab, below the Part 1 is the Part 2 form. The ratee only need to tick on the boxes of the competency indicators that he or she has demonstrated during the performance cycle. After ticking all the appropriate boxes, the ratee will then click Finalize Part 2, which prompts for a ratee's password. Now, this is separate from the rater's password that was set by the rater earlier. This one, the ratee will think of a new password. Again, minimum of 6 characters. This password will be used later in finalizing or unfinalizing parts 2 and 4. After confirming the password, the ratee will click on the Go button, which locks Part 2. Again, you will confirm that Part 2 has been locked or finalized because the screen or the background color has turned red. Finally, the ratee opens Part 4 and encodes his or her development plans. After encoding, at the bottom, the ratee will click Finalize Part 4 button, which will again prompt for the ratee's password that he or she set when finalizing Part 2. After inputting the ratee's password, click the Go button, and that should lock Part 4. And that finishes all the steps we need to do in accomplishing the IPCRF electronic tool. For the next part, the ratee will give the file back to the rater or the school head for the online submission.
Ito po ay nakabase sa RPMS, PPST, manual at sana'y makatulong po. Hindi po natin kailangan i-stress ang ating mga sarili. Ang mga documents na ito ay nandyan lamang po at hahanapin lang po natin. Okay? So bago tayo magpunta sa mga suggested documents, nais ko lamang ulit i-refresh ang ating mga sarili sa ating RPMS tool, sa ating MOV at sa ating mga performance indicators. Ito po ay naipaliwanag na rin po sa atin during the seminar, during the inset, or during the lock session. So, maaaring nakalimutan natin o kaya naman ay nawala na sa ating isipan kasi nga medyo matagal na. Possible naman na medyo nakakalimutan natin. So, this is a very good thing na ipapaalala ko ulit at naway maalala nyo ulit. Okay, simulan natin. Pag sinabi nating RPMS tools, it pertain to the two different teacher performance assessment instruments. So, mayroon tayong dalawang klase, syempre. Iba yung RPMS tool para sa ating mga teacher 1 to 3 na tinatawag natin mga proficient teachers. And iba din yung RPMS tool para sa ating mga master teacher 1 to 4 or tinatawag nating mga highly proficient teachers. Kung mapapansin nyo dito, ito yung mga para sa proficient teacher, ito naman ang para sa mga highly proficient teachers. Okay, ano-ano ba ang mga bahagi ng RPMS tools? Okay, so bawat tool ay may mga kanya-kanyang parts. We have, number 1, so makikita natin doon, meron tayong position and competency profile. Meron tayong job summary which includes the qualification standards, the duties and responsibilities. So hindi na natin kailangan ilagay yan kasi automatically ay nakalagay na po yan sa ating IPCRF. Okay? Meron din tayo doong part na tinatawag nating key results areas o yung mas kilala sa acronym na KRAS. Okay? Meron din tayong mga objectives yun. Ilan bang objectives natin doon? Malalaman natin mamaya. Doon din ay naka-indicate yung ating means of verification or MOV. Kaya mag-guide din naman tayo kung ano yung mga dapat nating i-prepare doon. Pero hindi ibig sabihin ay, kasi yung mga MOVs doon ay inuulit-ulit lang. So hindi ibig sabihin doon ay ipopotocopy natin bawat MOV, kaya lalong kumakapal. Ha? Okay? Meron din tayo doon, naka-indicate po sa ating RPMS tool, ang performance indicators. Kung ilan ang rating natin na makukuha. Depende sa document na pinresent natin sa ating rater. Okay? So, hindi po ito pakapalan. Uulitin ko, hindi po ito pakapalan ng ating portfolio. Ito po lamang ay kailangan kompleto lang ang documents natin kahit gaano pa yung kanipis. Basta na-justify mo, di ba, i-justify mo naman sa iyong rater kung bakit yun ang prepare mo at usually kasi doon ay paulit-ulit lang. So you don't need to photocopy again. You don't need to photocopy all the documents para lang ulit-ulitin lang yung ating mga MOVs. Okay? Ngayon, pag sinabi naman natin ang unang-unang part ng ating RPM, so yan tinatawag nating key result areas. Diba? So ilan ba? Ano bang ibig sabihin ng key result areas? This is the general outputs or outcomes. So in the context of the RPMS tools, ang KRA ang tinatawag nating domains of the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. Okay, yung ating tinatawag na PPST. Yun ang pinaka-domain natin. So, meron tayong 5 KRAs na makikita sa ating RPMS tools. Ano yung 5 KRAs na yun? Kung inyong matatandaan. Sige nga po. Ayan, yung number 1, makikita natin dito yung content, knowledge, and pedagogy. Okay po. So, ang ating pangalawa ay ang tinatawag nating learning environment and diversity of learners. Yung pangatlo naman natin ay ang curriculum and planning. Ang pang-apat natin is assessment and reporting. At yung panglima nating KRA ay ang plus factor. Di ba? Sa ulado ko yan. Dapat lang. Okay. So, yun ang tinatawag nating KRAS. Okay? 5 CRAs. So doon sa 5 CRAs na yon, binubuo yun ng objectives. So dito yun sa pangalawa, objectives. So ilang objectives yun? So in the RPMS tools, teacher's target, ito yung mga target natin na kailangan nating lagyan ng mga MOVs. So meron tayong 13 objectives para bumuo sa 5 CRAs na yun. So 13 lamang po yun ha. Baka may nababalitaan kayong 14, wala pa pong pang 14, so only 13 objectives na yun. Okay. Okay, so these objectives are the indicators of the PPST. Okay, ulitin natin ha, para sa kaalaman ng lahat. Yung CRAs natin, yun yung domains na nakalagay sa PPST. Yan, nakalagay naman dito. Yung mga CRAs natin, yun yung domains. Samantalang yung mga objectives natin, yun yung mga indicators na nakalagay sa ating PPST. Okay. Then, sa pangatlo na nakalagay sa ating RPMS tool ay ang tinatawag nating means of verification or tinatawag nating MOV. Ano ba ito? Ito yung mga list of documents that can show teachers' attainment of objectives. So, ito yung ating supporting documents or mga documents na ipapresent sa ating rater para ma-justify natin na na-attain natin yung mga objectives. Ilan yung objectives natin? 30. Now, anong ang pang-apat na part ng ating RPMs tool? Ayan po, naka-encircle na po. Ang tinatawag nating performance indicator. So, kung makikita nyo, nirate tayo depende sa pinresent nating mga documents, di ba? Kung ikaw ay kompleto, you will be rated 5 as outstanding. Kung kulang ka ng isa, so magiging 4 na lang ang rate mo, which means very satisfactory. Kung kulang ng 2, satisfactory. Kung kulang ka ng isa, unsatisfactory. Kung kulang ka ng iba pa, maraming kulang, so you will be rated poor performance. At wala naman sigurong nagpe-perform na poor, hopefully, di ba, mga kaguro. Okay, so ngayon naman, ano naman, at palawakin pa natin ang ating kaalaman sa ating tinatawag na MOV, yung tinatawag nating means of verification. So meron tayong dalawang klase, 2 types of MOV. We have main MOV, we have supporting MOV. Ano ba yung pagkakaiba na yan? Pag sinabi natin main MOV, this refers to the non-negotiable MOV needed to demonstrate attainment of the objective. So non-negotiable, kailangan hindi pwedeng mawala, hindi pwedeng palitan ng ibang MOV. Dapat yun ang ipapresent mo. Okay, pag sinabi naman na nating supporting, from the word self, supporting, this refers to the list of MOV ratees. The ratees could choose from the support to support the main MOV in the attainment of objective. Negotiable ito. Hindi natin kailangan ilagay lahat-lahat ng documents na hinihingi doon sa supporting MOVs. So meron tayong mga pagpipilian na maaring wala kang ganito pero meron kang choice na meron kang ganito. So okay na yon. Okay? So yan po yung ating tinatawag na MOVs. Okay, pag sinabi nating main MOV, ito ay tumutukoy sa COT, di ba? So hindi natin kailangang hagilap ng main MOV kasi ito ay meron na ibinibigay sa atin ng ating mga rater kapag natapos na yung ating observation. So meron tayong dalawang klaseng COT. Kung makikita nyo yung kulay blue, ito ay para sa mga highly proficient teachers, master's teacher 1 to 4, at yung kulay green na binibigay ng mga MT or rater nyo ay yung para naman sa inyo, teacher 1 to 3, mga proficient teachers. Okay, so alam na yun. Kung makikita nyo, meron tayong objective 1 to 9 doon, kung saan nire-rate na ng ating mga rater. Okay, so pag sinabi naman natin supporting MOV, so ito yung mga documents na maaari natin i-support para ma-present natin sa ating rater. DLP, di ba, given na yan. Hindi naman tayo i-observe kung wala kang modified DLL or DLP. Instructional materials usually ay na-observe na yan ng ating mga rater. So, pwedeng indicated na rin yan sa DLL mo. I-highlight mo lang yan doon sa DLL mo. Hindi mo na kailangan mag-present. Or, kung gusto mo, you have to take a picture ng PowerPoint, diba? One of the instructional materials. Performance tasks or assessment tools, indicated na rin yan sa DLL mo. You don't need to prove. At usually, na-observe na rin ng ating rater yan. And also, sample, compilation of and outputs. You don't need to put all the student out. You have to get lang na siyempre, kukunin na natin yung best of the best. Kahit isa lang doon sa mga compilation, isa o dalawa o tatlo ng student outputs. Ibig sabihin, may journal, yung portfolio ng bata. You can take a picture na lang at ilagay lang sa isang page para hindi ganun kakapal yung ating portfolio. Okay? Then we have certificates. Di ba? Marami tayo niyan. Certificates, minutes, and other evidence of participation. Hindi kailangan lahat ilagay. Kaya hindi natin kailangan mag-attend ng mga webinars. Di ba? Mamaya malalaman nyo kung ilan lang ang hinihingi. Magugulat kayo. Then yung class record natin, given na rin yan. Di ba? Hindi naman tayo makakapagbigay ng grade sa ating mga bata kung wala man tayong class record. Or yung report cards, given na rin sa ating mga advisors na may perma na ng ating first, second, third quarter, di ba? Okay na yon. And others, ibig sabihin, kung kulang ka ng documents, pwede ka mag-present ng justification of documents. Ino-note mo lang why did you choose na document yon supporting MOB yun. Ino-note mo yan. Pag naglagay ka ng note, yun ang tinatawag na annotations. I-justify mo lang why did you use those documents. Bakit mo ginamit tong document na ito para i-present mo sa rater. Yun ang tinatawag na annotations. O di ba? Huwag natin i-stress. Nandyan yan lang sa tabi-tabi. Iipunin natin, bubuin na natin, kakalkalan na natin yung konti yung ating mga documents. So, alam naman natin yung mga teachers, di ba? Nakatambak lang yung mga documents. So, hihilain lang natin yun. Okay, so ito yung sinasabi ko. These are the things na ito-prepare lang natin at kapag nakuha na natin yung documents na ito, ay pwede nating gamitin na sa ibang objectives. O, katulad nito, remember, nakalagay dito, remember that one document may be used as MOB or evidence of performance for other objectives. Ibig sabihin po nun, kapag nag-present na tayo ng isang document, yung document na yun ay pwede nang magamit sa ibang objectives. Hindi po kailangan i-photocopy. Ilalagay mo lang yung COT, lalagyan mo lang ng tab na yung nilagay mo ay COT. And that COT ay can be used na sa ilan. Ayan, ang dami nang pwedeng puntahan. Objective 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Ino-note mo lang na yung COT na nilagay mong attachment ay pwede nang gamitin doon sa mga objectives na yon. And another document na i-attach mo, DLP. Yung DLP na yan ay pwede nang ilagay or i-refer mo lang na yan ay gagamitin mo sa objective 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. Ayan, hindi kailangan i-photocopy. Kung ikaw naman ay nag-attach ng instructional materials, example yung PowerPoint mo, ay kung ano-ano pang mga instructional materials na ilagay mo, i-refer mo lang na yun ay pwede nang ibigay o ilagay sa objective 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9. O, kung ikaw naman ay nag-attach ng performance task or assessment tools, i-refer mo lang, ino-note mo lang na yun ay para sa objective 1, 2, 3, 10, and 11. Okay po. Kung ikaw may nag-attach ng sample ng compilation ng student outputs, i-refer na yun ay gagamitin mo sa objective 11 and 12. Okay po. Kung ikaw naman ay nag-attach ng mga certificates, ng mga minutes, ng mga evidence of participation, yun ay pwedeng gamitin na sa objective 8, objective 12, at main MOB yung mga certificates pagdating sa objective 13. Ito yung mga plus factor. Yung objective 13 natin, yung mga plus factor natin. So, naka-green siya kaya kailangan certificate po ang gagamitin natin as our main MOB lamang po para sa objective 13. Okay po? Yung class record mo, yung rating sheet mo, yung report cards ay pwedeng gamitin na sa objective 11 and objective 12. So, yan lamang po ang ating mga prepare. So, di ba, sabi ko nga sa inyo, given na yan, nandyan na po yan sa ating file. Ang kailangan lang natin gawin ay hugutin lamang. Okay. So, ito yung sinasabi ko na kailangan mo lang i-prepare para sa ating portfolio. Okay? Okay. So, doon ako sa next slide. Ayan. Kasi same lamang po yan para maintindihan natin. So, di ba, every quarter naman ay nagpe-prepare na tayo ng mga documents. Kaya hindi natin kailangan gumawa or mag-create ng panibagong document kasi nandyan na po yan. Eh, kung mapapansin niyo yung COT natin, so ilan ba ang ating COT? Di ba, 1, 2, 3, 4. Kasi every quarter tayo ino-observe. Pero wag mag-alala yung mga hindi na-observe ng fourth quarter. Kasi meron akong i-discuss mamaya. So, uulitin ko yung apat na yan, na COT na yan, plus ilan? Meron tayong DLP. Siyempre, sa bawat COT ay may nakalagay na DLP or DLS. So, apat din yun. So, meron na tayong 8 documents. Yung 8 documents na yan, i-attach lang natin. Hindi kailangan i-photocopy mo ng paulit-ulit. So, i-note mo lang na yung 8 documents na yan ay good for Objective 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Okay po, i-highlight mo lang lahat ng mga parts doon sa yung DLL para malaman na yung part na yun ay para doon sa objective 9 or 10 or depende kung saang objective naka-fall yun, okay? You don't need to photocopy ng paulit-ulit. Okay, for every quarter, meron tayong MOB na i-prepare, di ba? Sa objective 8, meron tayong ilan? Objective 8, meron tayong 4 documents lamang po. Hindi kailangan pasobrahan yan. Objective 11, meron tayong 4 na documents yan. Kasi every quarter na yan, meron na po tayong isa. Kaya nagiging 4. Okay, ganun din sa Objective 12. 4 lamang. At sa Objective 13, ganun din, 4 din lang po ang i-prepare natin. Hindi kailangan i-prepare lahat. Hindi kailangan i-attach lahat. Kaya dapat, dahil alam na natin itong mga documents na ito, we don't need, kailangan be careful na tayo sa ating mga pipiliin. No? So, kailangan kung naka-attend ka na ng mga seminar, good for 1 na yun. So, di mo na kailangan mag-attend ng pangalawang seminar kasi nga kailangan isang klase lamang para sa webinar. Kung ikaw ay nagtitrain, mamaya i-explain ko sa inyo lang mabuti. Okay? So, all in all, dahil meron ka ng 8 plus 4, 4, so 4 times 4, 16 plus 8. Ang ipe-prepare mo lamang ay 24 documents. Pero, maaari pang mabawasan. Yung COT natin at DLP, okay na yon. Yung 8 documents na yan, gagamitin na yan sa 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Ano naman ang Objective 8, 11, 12, 13? Ano-ano yung mga klaseng documents na ipe-prepare mo? Okay, yan ang aking tatalakayin. Okay, simulan natin sa Objective 8. Pag sinabi natin Objective 8, di ba, ang nakalagay doon ng ating objective doon ay participated in collegial discussions that use teacher and learner feedback to enrich teaching practice. So ito yung mga LAC sessions natin, yung mga meetings natin tungkol sa discussion. So mag-a-attach ka lang ng 4 doon, di ba nakalagay kanina 4, pero maaari pang mabawasan ha. So 4 na documents, yun po ang standard natin. So pwede ka mag-attach ng minutes mo, ng personal notes mo, or ng attendance mo, or ng certificate mo. Diba, kung ikaw yung facilitator, so pwede mo magamit yun doon sa Objective 8. So 4 lang na documents ang i-prepare mo. Diba, may minutes ka na, isa na yun. Meron ka ng notes, isa na rin yun. May attendance ka na, nag-attend ng 4 na beses, okay na yun. Kung may certificate ka o another one, may 4 ka na. So, 4 documents lamang po. Okay? Then, sa Objective 11, meron ka na itong ating objective. Monitored and evaluated learner progress and achievement using learner attainment data. Objective 11 natin ay, ito yung mga pwede natin i-attach. Okay, halimbawa, pero isa na, pwede na isang document mo, yung DLL mo na may nakalagay na mastery index. Ibig sabihin, di ba, kinukuha natin yung out of the number of pupils, ilan ba doon ang nakakuha ng 75%. Usually ako, pag nag-observe ako, nilalagay ko na yun doon. Kaya sa mga na-observe ko, hindi na ito problema kasi nakalagay na yung mastery level doon, di ba? Okay na po yun. Isa na yun, isang document na yun. So, kung naglagay ka naman ng performance task or summative assessment tool, o di ba? Meron tayo, di ba? Yung iyong summative folder, o kahit mag-attach ka lang doon ng isa o dalawa, pwede na po yun. Tapos nakalagay doon yung table of specification, tapos nakalagay din doon yung mastery level, kung ilan ang nakakuha ng 75%. That's one document. Okay, another document, magkuha ka ng sample or compilation ng student outputs mo. So, another document yon. Hindi mo kailangan ilagay lahat. Pipili ka lang, syempre, yung pinaka-the best of the best. Na kung wala, at least meron ka lang that's another document. At ang pwede nating i-attach, ayan, class record naman. So, you have to put the rating sheet na lang. Pwede na yon as one document para makonsider natin sa Objective 11. So, 4 lang po. You don't need to put anything else. 4 lang. Pag may 4 ka na, that's good na. Okay po. Okay, punta tayo sa Objective 12. Ano naman nakalagay sa Objective 12? Communicated promptly and clearly the learner's needs, progress, and achievement to key stakeholders, including the parents or the guardians. Diba? Quarterly naman ay nagkakaroon tayo ng PTC, Parent-Teacher Conference. So, pwede na yun. Unang document pwede i-attach ay yung minutes ng PTC natin na may attendance, one document. Pwede tayong mag-attach ng another one, report cards na may pirma ng ating magulang. Second, diba? Kahit ilan lang yung napirma na yan, that's support. Another document. Kung meron tayong test papers na chinek, tapos may pirma yung magulang, another, pangatlo. Kung wala naman, kung meron tayong anecdotal records, pwede rin. Okay. Kung wala naman, pang-apat natin pwede natin gamitin, kung wala tayong anecdotal records, meron tayong letter na press release na binigay, pinasulat sa mga magulang at pinirma ng magulang. And that's one document. Visit home, visit another document dito sa Objective 12. So marami tayong pagpipilian. Kailangan lang makabuo tayo ng 4. Hindi natin kailangan makabuo ng more than 4. 4 lang, okay na. Then, for the last objective, ito na yung tinatawag nating Objective 13, perform various related works, activities that contribute to the teaching learning process. So dito medyo mahigpit na tayo, no? So ito yung tinatawag nating plus factor certificates. Ang hinihingi kasi doon, naka-specified, nakalagay po doon sa ating RPMS tools, kailangan meron kang ma-present na 4 na different certificates. Pag sinabi natin different, hindi ibig sabihin, nag-attend ka ng webinar, 4 na webinar ang na-attendan mo, okay na yun. Hindi po yun. So, pag nag-attend ka ng webinar, equivalent yun sa 1 document lang. Kailang isa lang ang ipe-present mo. Kasi kahit mag-present ka ng 4, ng 10 doon, automatic equivalent sa 1 document lang yon. Okay? Okay, another thing. Okay, kung ikaw ay naging facilitator, speaker ka, so pangalawang document na po yun. Kung ikaw naman ay naging chairman or naging part ng committee, so another, pangatlong documents na yon. Okay? So ito, committee involvement. Okay, kung ikaw naman ay naging advisor ng isang extracurricular activity, so may 4 ka na. Okay, kung wala naman, meron kang naging author ka ng isang journal or book, another document. Kung ikaw naman ay naging co-author lamang doon, another document na rin yun. Kung naging contributor ka lang, another document din po yan. Pero kung ikaw ay naging author na, tapos naging co-author pa, naging contributor, isa lang po ang tatanggapin doon. As one lang yun. Okay, another document na pwede mong i-present. Naging chairperson ka or chairman ka or naging grade leader ka or naging coordinator ka, subject coordinator. So, as one lang yun. Diba? Kung ikaw ay grade leader, tapos nag-present ka ng coordinator, isa lang ang pwede mong ilagay doon. Hindi pwedeng naging grade leader ka, tapos naging coordinator ka, tapos dalawa. Hindi ibig sabihin 2 document na yun. Isa lang po yun. Nagkakaintindihan po tayo. Kaya dapat, kaya nga yung ating school head ay nagbibigay ng iba't ibang mga assignment para kahit paano ay nadidistribute po. Nasa-segregate po at nadidistribute po yung mga assignment natin. Okay? Kung ikaw naman ay naging mentor sa isang pre-service, ayan. Kung ikaw ay naging mentor sa competition, di ba, yung mga winnings mo, as one lang yun. Kaya kung ikaw ay nanalo na ng 4, wala nang bearing yun. So, kailangan isa lang, okay na yun. Kaya dapat, huwag tayo masyadong kumuha ng mga assignment natin. So, kailangan ibigay din natin sa ating mga co-teachers, no? So, ayan po yung ating plus factor. Kailangan meron ka lamang 4. So, dahil alam na natin yun, so alam na natin ang gagawin natin, no? So, dapat na-visualize na natin yung mga discard natin sa ating mga trabaho. Kaya kung ikaw ay coordinator na sa isang subject, ibigay na natin sa iba O halimbawa, okay, so nagiging giver tayo naman. So, ganun po ang nangyayari. So, kung ikaw ay meron ka na nagiging coordinator ka na, meron ka na isang document. Kung nag-speaker ka na ng isang beses, so meron ka na isa. Kung ikaw ay nag-train, okay, isa ka na. Kung ikaw ay nagiging mentor, so you have 4 na. And so on and so forth. So, yan po yung ating objective number 13. Kailangan natin mag-present lamang ng 4. Hindi na natin kailangan ilagay lahat. Po. So ngayon naman, explain ko lang sa inyo kung paano mag-compute ng quality sa ating RPMS tool. Okay? So paano nga ba kino-compute yan? So ayan. So di ba sa ating COT, meron tayong objective 1 to 9 doon. Okay? Sa bawat COT, tayo ay ino-observe during first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. Standard po yun nga. Kaya mamaya, paano yun? Hanggang third quarter lang ito. Walang problema yan. Mamaya, tatalakayin natin yan. So standard muna tayo. So, alimbawa, ikaw na-observe ng 4 na quarter. So, meron kang 4 na COT. Nakiget niyo po? Okay. Sa bawat COT, meron doong 1 to 9 objective. So, titingnan mo lamang yung objective 1. Kung paano tayo mag-compute sa objective 1, ganun din ang pag-compute sa objective 2 to 9. Okay po? Sa objective 1, titingnan mo yung COT 1 mo, ilan na nakuha mo. Example, nakakuha ka ng 6, ilalagay mo. Sa COT number 2, sa second quarter, ilan ang nakalagay na rating mo sa objective 1. For example, naka 6 ka. Sa COT number 3 mo sa third quarter, ilan naman ang nakuha mo sa objective 1? Naka 7 ka na kasi alam mo nang gagawin. Sa COT number 4, ilan na nakalagay sa objective 1 mo? So 7 ulit. So bawat rating na yan, itatransmute mo yan sa ating performance indicator. So meron tayong transmutation table dito. Ayan. Mapapansin mo, ito po ay para lamang po sa mga teacher 1 to 3 or for proficient teachers. So, di ba ang highest rating natin sa COT ay 7, second 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay po. So, equivalent po kapag ikaw po ay nakakuha, ayan, kung mapapansin nyo, ito po ang ating titingnan. Ito po yung ating 5-point scale, equivalent po ng ating COT rating. So, ang 7 po, katumbas po niyan ay 5, yung 6 po katumbas ay 4, yung 5 po katumbas ay 3, yung 4 naman katumbas ay 2, yung 3 ay katumbas ay 1. So, itatransmute mo lang. So, ayan, 6 ang nakuha sa COT mo, so equivalent yan sa 4, kaya nakalagay ay 4. Okay. Sa COT number 2 mo, yung objective 1 mo ay nakuha mo ay 6, so kaya ang nakalagay ay 4. Ganon din, sa observation COT number 3 mo, ang objective 1 mo ay 7, kaya ang nakalagay ay 5. Ganun din sa COT number 4 mo, ikaw ay naka 7, so automatic ang kanyang equivalent ay 5. Okay po, so nagkakaintindihan tayo ngayon. Ano na ang gagawin next? So ang gagawin mo ay ito-total mo na ito. Ang ito-total mo po ay hindi yung rating mo sa COT, kundi yung transmuted rating po. So i-add mo lamang po 4 plus 4 equals 8 plus 5 equals 13 plus 5, kaya naging 18. Then after that, i-divide mo sa 4. Kung 4 na observation ang iyong nakuha. Okay po? Ngayon, so 18 divided by 4, equivalent po sa 4.500. Kasi 3 decimal places po tayo. Okay? So, ayan po. Ibig sabihin, ang nakuha mong average transmuted rating po para sa objective 1 ay 4.500. So, ganun din po ang pag-compute sa other objectives. Okay? So, ganyan na ganyan din po. Sana naintindihan ha, para alam na natin at may idea tayo. Okay, so yan po ang quality. Ngayon, ito na po ang ating tatalakayin. Ito po, kamakailan meron tayong Deped Order number 45, Series 2020, kung saan ito ay na-float po during, it was on April 18, 2020. So ano po bang Deped Order number 45, Series of 2020? It's about results-based performance management system guidelines for school year 2019-2020, year-end activities in light of COVID-19 measures. So, dahil sa pandemic, kaya ito na buo. Okay, so ilalagay ko lang, specify ko lang po yung mga importante na nakalagay doon. No? So ito po ang nakalagay doon. As stated in paragraph 35 of Deped Order Number 2, Series of 2015, ito po, in exceptional cases and only if the situation warrants, a one-time recalibration, o ulitin ko ha, one-time recalibration shall be allowed. So, ito yung gagawin natin. Exceptional cases shall include, ano po ba yung mga exceptional cases? Include instances when high-level decisions are taken into effect, such as changes in strategic directions and circumstances beyond the control of the rating, such as natural and or man-made calamities, including typhoon, earthquake, and other fortuitous events. Okay? Fortuitous events. So, sa kaso ng ating COVID-19, ito po ay tinatawag nating natural calamities. Isang klase ng natural hindi natin inaasahan kusang dumating yung ating COVID-19. So, dahil dyan, magkakaroon tayo ng one-time recalibration. Anong ibig sabihin ng one-time recalibration? Ayan. So magkakaroon tayo ng another computation dahil nga nagkaroon tayo ng COVID-19 at nasuspend yung klase natin. So ito yung sample computation for quality and efficiency for classroom observable RPMS objectives. Okay, di ba? Ito ang scenario. Si proficient teacher A ay dapat nakaschedule siya para sa pang-apat na observation, di ba, sa fourth quarter. Pero dahil sa hindi inaasahang pangyayari ng COVID-19 ay hindi siya na-observe kasi nasuspend na yung klase. So, nagkaroon lamang siya ng rating na COT na 1 para sa first, second, third quarter. So, 3 lamang ang COT rating yan. So, i-consider natin yon, no? Dahil dito sa Deped Order Number 45 Series of 2020, walang problema yan. So, magkakaroon lamang siya ng 3 COT. So, 3 COTs or documents lamang ang kanyang ihahanda. Ayan po. So, ayan. Paano na i-compute? Para ma-compute yung rating niya sa quality sa ating RPMS Objective 1, i-identify natin yung kanyang, kanina di ba diniscuss ko na yung 5-point scale, yung 7 equivalent sa 5, yung 6 equivalent sa 4. So ito na ang pagko-compute ng kanyang quality. Kung paano kinompute sa Objective 1, ganito rin ang mangyayari sa ibang objectives. Diba? Nagkaroon lamang siya ng 3 period of COT. We have 7. So ano equivalent niyan? 5. Sa second COT niya, naka-6 lamang yung objective 1 niya, kaya 4. Sa pangatlong COT niya, yung objective 1 niya ay 7, so equivalent of 5. So, ang gagawin mo lang, i-add lamang yung rating na nakuha niya sa 3 COTs. So, 5 plus 4 plus 1 is equal to 14. So, i-divide mo na lamang sa 3. Kasi nung COTs lamang ang kanya nakuha. So, ang 14 divided by 3 ay equivalent of 4.667, which is ang kanyang magiging quality rating ay 5. Naintindihan po? So, yan po ang ating, so walang problema, di ba? So, kung ikaw ay 3 beses lang na-observe, kasi hindi ka na-observe sa fourth quarter, 5 pa rin ang nakuha mo, which is outstanding pa rin. Di ba? Okay. For efficiency, walang problema, katulad ng nabanggit sa ating Deped Order, magkakaroon tayo ng recalibration. So, mag-a-adjust tayo ng ating recalibration, ng ating rating. So, i-check natin yung validity. Di ba sa original, nakalagay doon sa efficiency, kailangan natin makapag-submit ng 4. Di ba? Para magkaroon ng outstanding rating. Okay, dahil nagkaroon ng pandemya at nagkaroon ng Deped Order, pwede na tayong i-recalibrate natin yung isasubmit ng mga teachers. So, ibis na 4, pwede na lang mag-submit siya ng 3. 3 lamang, pag nakapag-submit na siya ng 3, automatically, 5 na rin ang makukuha niyang rating. Okay. So, kung 2 lang nasabit niya, so 4, kung so on and so forth. Ganun po. Hindi na po kailangang 4. Because of the Deped Order. Kailangan 3 lang, okay na po, outstanding na po yung ating mga teachers. Okay? So, para sa sinabi ko kanina, because of the Deped Order number 45 series of 2020, ko kanina na maaaring mabawasan pa yung documents na ipiprepare natin instead of Ayan, di ba? So dahil hanggang third quarter lang tayo, wala na yung fourth quarter natin, so nabawasan na. Imbes na 8, magiging 6 documents na lang. Kasi dalawa, 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 so times 2 times 3, kaya naging 6. Kaya magiging 3 documents na lang for Objective 8, 3 documents na rin sa Objective 11, 3 documents na lang sa Objective 12, at 3 documents na lamang sa Objective 13. So 18 documents na lamang ang ipiprepare natin, hindi na po 24. Diba? Para sa school year 2019-2020. Okay, paano yan kung meron na akong na-prepare na 4, ako ay na-observe sa pang-4 at na-prepare ko na yung pang-4, walang problema. So, mag-uusap kayo ni rater, babalik pa rin si rater doon sa old RPMS tools, di ba? Pero kung ikaw ay hindi na-observe sa fourth quarter, so babalikan natin yung eto nga po, yung Deped Order Number 40 Series of 2020 na you have to prepare lang 18 documents. E paano yan, sir? Kung halimbawa, gusto ko sundin yung Deped Order Number 40, nasa desisyon mo. Nasa kamay mo, ikaw ang ratee, ikaw ang susunod. Si rater lamang ay nakadepende kung ano ang i-rate sa'yo. So, between the mutual understanding ni rater at ni ratee. Basta, i-justify mo yung documents mo, walang problema yan. Yan ay nasa pagkakasundo na ni rater at saka ni ratee. Hopefully ay naintindihan po ng ating mga kaguro. So ito po ang ating mga i-prepare lamang 18 documents. So wag po tayo magpa-stress. Okay? At keep safe po hindi po natin nire-require. Kailangan isanggalang po ang inyong kalusugan, ang inyong safetyness para lang po ma-prepare ang inyong portfolio. Muli ipinapaalala po. So depende po sa ating mga head, depende sa ating mga consultants kung paano natin i-prepare yung ating portfolio. Okay? Yung aking binigay sa inyo ay gabay lamang para kung sakaling nandyan na sa iyong mga kamay ang mga documents na yan, hindi na natin kailangan hanapin pa. So kung yan ay nasa iyong kamay na, i-prepare mo na yan, i-attach mo lamang ng maayos at kapag ikaw ay i-rate na, depende na po sa justification mo kung paano mo i-defend yung mga documents na ipinipre. So, hindi po mahirap maging outstanding. Kaya, wag po natin masyadong problemahin po yung ating portfolio.
Po is KRA 1. Ayan. So, ito po yung KRA 1. Ayan po yung Content, Knowledge, and Pedagogy. So, objective number 1 is applied knowledge of content within and across curriculum teaching areas. Ang MOBs na pwede nating ilagay. So, una po is Classroom Observation Tool, COT, or Inter-Observer Agreement po na related dun sa ating objectives. Lesson plans or modified DLLs, instructional materials highlighting the mastery of content and its integration in other subject areas, performance task or test materials, and others po. So, kung mayroon po tayong naiisip na pwedeng idagdag na MOB para sa Objective 1. So, pwede po natin i-attach dito. So, nasa school head naman po natin if tatanggapin po niya kung acceptable po ba or hindi yung pinasa nating MOB. Ang tanong po ay, ihahanda po ba ang lahat ng MOBs na ito? So, ang sagot po ay hindi. Ang pinakamahalaga po dito ay yung COT rating sheet natin o yung Inter-Observer Agreement na supported lang po ng any of the other MOBs po. Dahil kung titingnan po natin sa efficiency, so sabi po dito ay submitted at least 4 lessons using MOB 1, which is rating sheet po, and supported by any one of the other given MOB. So pwede po natin isubmit na diyan ay lesson plan, instructional materials, o yung performance task or test materials na ating ginamit, o ano man pong MOB na sa palagay natin ay susupport doon sa objective number 1. Okay, so sa objective number 1, sa quality, so para makuha natin yung outstanding na 5, so kailangan lamang ay may rating tayo na 7 doon sa ating mga ginawang COT. So kung tayo naka-4, so mayroon dong computation, ipapakita ko later. And then, hindi nakaka-apekto dito kung ilang COT ang nagawa mo. Kung nakaisa ka lang at may nota ka namang 7, so pasok ka pa rin doon sa outstanding. So kung 4, 3, 2 ang nagawa mo, so i-compute natin niyan gamit yung transmuted at hindi yung nota natin sa COT ang ating i-average. Kung hindi ka naka-4 na COT, let's say naka-3 ka lang, 2 o 1, so pagdating sa efficiency, doon bababa ang iyong nota. Kasi kung mapapansin natin dito sa outstanding, so submitted at least 4 lessons. So para maka-5 ka, kailangan ay may 4 lessons ka and supported ng isang MOB bukod dun sa COT rating sheet na ating ipapasa. Paano nga ba i-compute ang ating COT ratings? So halimbawa, meron tayong 4 na COT. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, ang nota natin sa COT1 is 7, sa 2 ay 6, 3 ay 5, 4 ay 4. So, itatransmute natin ang ating grades gamit ang RPMS 5-point rating scale. So, kapag ang nota mo sa COT ay 7, so ang nota mo lalagay sa IPCRF is 5, 6 is 4, 5 is 3, 4 is 2, and 3 is 1. Halimbawa sa objective number 1, so ito ang mga naging nota ko sa 4 na COT. Halimbawa COT1 ay 7 ako, sa 2 ay 6, sa 3 ay 5, sa 4 ay 4. So ito halimbawa sa objective number 1, so ito yung nota ko. So meron akong 4 na COT. Halimbawa sa COT1 ay naka 7, sa 2 ay 6, sa 3 ay 5, at sa 4 ay 4. So itatransmute ko siya gamit yung RPMS 5-point rating scale nga. So ito yung lumabas, so 5, 4, 3, at 2 at ipa-plus ko lahat ng iyan. So 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 is 14. Okay, so pagka-add ko, so i-divide ko siya kung ilang COT ang aking nagawa. So naka-4 ako, so ito ay divided by 4. So 14 divided by 4 is 3 and 5/10. At ito ang nota ko sa objective number 1. And then gamit ulit yung RPMS 5-point rating scale. So ang 3 and 5/10 ba ay anong nota? So ito ay 4 or very satisfactory. So dahil doon, ang ilalagay kong actual results or yung nota ko doon sa quality is 4. Okay, so ano nga bang MOB ang inilagay ko sa objective number 1? So ang nilagay ko ay ang COT, kauna-unahan. So meron itong 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So naka-4 akong COT. And then, so nilagay ko yung lesson plan supported sa objective number 1. So 4 din itong lesson plan na related doon sa objective number 1. So nakalagay naman siya doon yung annotation. So ang mga lesson plan naman ay downloadable na sa Facebook o sa Google. So magagamit na natin yung mga lesson plan na sinishare ng mga kapwa nating mga guro. So pangalawang nailagay ko ay yung instructional materials na ginamit ko sa demo. Dinagdag ko na rin itong instructional materials ko sa MOB para sa Objective 1 dahil na kataon na naihanda ko na rin siya. So isinama ko na rin dahil sayang naman kung hindi ko may dadagdag. Pero sapat na sana yung lesson plan na pang support doon sa MOB1 ko na nauna, which is the COT rating sheet. Next ay sa objective number 2. So you used a range of teaching strategies that enhance learner achievement in literacy and numeracy skills. So ito ang mga MOBs na kailangan nating support sa objective number 2. So nandun ulit yung rating sheet or inter-observer agreement, lesson plans or modified DLLs, instructional materials, and performance tasks or test materials, and result of assessment at others ulit kung meron tayong naiisip na MOBs na susupport sa objective number 2. Okay, balikan ulit natin ang ating IPCRF. So sa objective number 2 sa quality, so same lang naman kung paano natin makukuha ang grades dun sa naunang objective number 1. Pagdating naman sa efficiency, so kailangan ay submitted at least 4 learner-centered lesson as evidently shown in MOB1 and supported by any one of the other MOB given. So, bahala tayo kung papasa natin lesson plan, instructional materials na magsusupport doon sa ating MOB1 which is rating sheet COT o di kaya Inter-Observer Agreement. Kaya kung titingnan natin, isang malaking bagay talaga na tayo ay at least nakaapat na COT sa taong ito sapagkat malaki ang epekto nito pagdating doon sa efficiency. Kung tayo naka 3, 2 or 1, so hindi natin ma-achieve yung nota na 5 points. So ito, rating sheet ulit sa objective number 2, apat ito ulit. So nandun naman sa unang video kung paano i-compute ang nota natin sa COT. Kasunod, ito ulit mga lesson plans. So modified ko lang siya, kinuha ko lang yung part ng lesson plan na mayroong related doon sa objective number 2. So naglagay ulit ako ng instructional materials. Next, objective number 3. So applied a range of teaching strategies to develop critical and creative thinking as well as other higher order thinking skills. So ang kanyang mga MOBs ay ganun lang ulit. Rating sheet or Inter-Observer Agreement, lesson plans or modified DLLs, instructional materials, performance task or test materials, results of assessment used in teaching and others ulit kung meron. So kailangan ay laging related doon sa objective number 3. Sa objective number 3, so kagaya lang siya ng mga naunang objective 1 and 2 pagdating sa quality and efficiency. So ayan, COT ulit. Lesson plans, so lagi siyang apat ang ni-attach ko at instructional materials. Ito yung laman ng portfolio ko para sa KRA 1 sa tatlong objectives. So dumako na tayo sa KRA number 2 sa learning environment and diversity of learners. So objective number 4 is manage classroom structure to engage learners individually or in groups in meaningful exploration, discovery, and hands-on activities within a range of physical learning. So ano yung mga MOBs na ating ilalagay? So na ulit ay rating sheet or Inter-Observer Agreement and lesson plans na naka-highlight yung ating objective. Ang objective number 4 ay kagaya lang ulit ng mga naunang objectives. So yun lang din yung pagdating sa quality at efficiency. So makikita din na mahalaga yung apat na COT. So ayan, COT, rating sheet, and lesson plan. So apat ulit siya. Ayan. Next, sa objective number 5, manage learner behavior constructively by applying positive and non-violent discipline to ensure learning-focused environment. So ano ang MOBs na ilalagay natin sa objective number 5? So rating sheet ulit or Inter-Observer Agreement. So kailangan sa ating COT, so nagpapakita ka ng providing motivation, praising the learners or giving positive feedback, setting house rules or guidelines, or ensuring learners' active participation. Okay, objective number 5. So, ganun lang din ulit sa quality at efficiency. So, at least 4 of the given strategies as observed in at least 4 lessons para makakuha tayo ulit ng 5 points. So, ito, COT. Ayan, ito naman ay ang observation notes form ng COT RPMS. So, in-attach ko at in-highlight ko yung part ng comment na related doon sa objective number 5. So, ito, lesson plan, instructional materials, ito, mga output ng mga bata na kung saan nagpapakita ako ng feedback o positive feedback. Ayan. Ito ay yung during recognition every quarter. Next, objective number 6. So, use differentiated developmentally appropriate learning experiences to address learners' gender needs, strengths, interests, and experiences. So, ano yung mga MOBs? So, COT ulit, rating sheet, or Inter-Observer Agreement. So, gamit na gamit yan. Paulit-ulit yung i-attach doon sa ating portfolio. So, lesson plans or modified DLLs, instructional materials, and meron ulit na others. Objective number 6, so sa quality ay similang ulit siya ng mga naunang objectives. Pero pagdating sa efficiency, submitted at least 4 differentiated teaching strategies in at least 2 lessons as evidenced by MOB1 and supported by any one of the acceptable MOB. So, 4 differentiated teaching strategies ang nihingi at least sa 2 lessons na ating ginamit sa ating COT demo teaching. Okay, ayan, COT ulit. And lesson plans, DLL, instructional materials. Yan, ito yung others ko, mga pictures of my learners doing their different activities. Ayan. So, sayo ng Karinyosa, experiment. So, yun ang bumubuo sa KRA number 2. So, lumako na tayo sa KRA number 3 sa curriculum and planning. So, objective number 7. So, plan, manage, and implemented developmentally sequenced teaching and learning processes to meet curriculum requirements and varied teaching contexts. O ano-ano ba ang mga MOBs? So, COT rating sheet ulit, inter-observer agreement, lesson plans or modified DLLs, instructional materials, and others ulit. Objective number 7, so sa quality ay similang ng mga naunang objectives. Pagdating sa efficiency, so kailangan nating ipakita yung at least 4 developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process as evidently shown in MOB1 and supported by any one of the given MOB. So ayan, ito ulit ang COT rating sheet. And ayan, so blanco siya, hindi ko pa siya nalalagyan. So ang lalagay ko na dito is notes na pumunta doon sa air tags ng COT DLL or instructional materials para masuportahan ko yung objectives. Next, objective number 8, participated in collegial discussions that use teacher and learner feedback to enrich teaching practice. So narito ang mga MOBs na pinating ilagay sa objective number 8. So, personal notes of teachers on LACs or FGDs meeting with proof of attendance. So, minutes of LAC sessions and others. So may proof of attendance. So, kailangan ay may attendance tayo. So, ayan, wala pa rin ako nalalagay. Okay, sa objective number 8, sa quality. So, kailangan tayo ay consistently na uma-attend ng mga LAC session or FGDs meetings para makakuha tayo ng 5 points. So, sa kapag frequently naman ay 4 points, occasionally is 3 points. Pagdating sa efficiency, so para makakuha ng 5 points, so at least ay 4 LACs, FGDs or meetings as eventually shown in any one of the given MOB. So, kahit ang nilagay lang natin, halimbawa dito ay minutes o di kaya ay personal notes. Next, objective number 9. So, selected, develop, organized, and use appropriate teaching and learning resources, including ICT to address learning goals. So, ano ba yung mga MOBs para sa objective number 9? So, classroom, COT rating sheet ulit, inter-observer agreement, about using appropriate teaching and learning resources, including ICT. Ito yung mga dapat, activity sheet, task sheets, worksheets, PowerPoint presentation, video clips, module or SIM or strategic intervention materials. And then lesson plan ulit and others kung meron. So objective 9 sa quality, so nakabase lang ulit ito sa ating COT. Pagdating naman sa efficiency, so kailangan lang natin na nakapag-submit ng at least 4 varied teaching and learning resources, including ICT. So as eventually shown, MOB1 and supported ulit ng any one of the acceptable MOB. So yan, COT, rating sheet, 4 ulit yan. So lesson plan ang ginamit kong MOBs to support my COT rating sheet. Ayan, so nakalagay din yung instructional materials. So, ayun ang bumubuo sa KRA number 3, curriculum and planning. So KRA number 4 is assessment and reporting. So mayroon ulit siyang tatlong objectives. Objective number 10, 11, and 12. So sa objective number 10, so siya ay design, selected, organized, and use diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment strategies consistent with curriculum requirements. So ano-ano ang mga MOBs sa objective number 10? So COT rating sheet ulit or Inter-Observer Agreement Form. Lesson plans or DLLs. Develop diagnostic test na kailangan meron tayong TOS reviewed by our superiors, so by our school head or principals. So with sample accomplished questionnaire or answer sheet. So kailangan ay may example tayo ng questionnaire. Next is develop summative test. Kailangan ay may TOS din tayo, again reviewed by superior, and a sample accomplished questionnaire. And then develop performance task. So with rubrics siya, reviewed by superiors, and with sample accomplished rubrics and others para doon sa objective number 10. Objective number 10 sa quality. So nakaano ulit siya sa ating COT kagaya ulit ng mga naunang objectives. Pagdating naman sa efficiency, so submitted at least 4 varied assessment tools as evenly shown in any one of the acceptable MOB. So kailangan lang natin ng at least 4 varied assessment tools. So unang-una sa aking MOBs ulit ay ang rating sheet. So lesson plan o DLL. Ito ay yung diagnostic test and science. So isa lang nilagay ko kasi masyadong dadami naman. So kailangan ay reviewed by the superior. And then sample questionnaire, ayan. Next, objective number 11. So monitored and evaluated learner progress and achievement using learner attainment data. So ito yung mga MOBs para sa objective number 11. So compilation of a learner's written work with summary of results and with signature of parents. So ito, kailangan may compilation tayo ng mga learners written work. So pwede dito yung mga portfolio ng mga estudyante. So dapat ay mayroong summary of results and signature of parents. Next is formative or summative assessment and frequency of errors with identified less mastered skills. So ayan, yung less learned competencies natin. And then, so dapat yung number 3, class records or grading sheets. So, number 3 to. So pwede natin ilagay yung ating class records or grading sheets. So pwede natin i-print at i-attach dito. Next is lesson plans or DLLs. And then others. Objective number 11, so sa quality, so kailangan lang maipakita ng ating mga MOBs na tayo ay consistently, frequently, occasionally na nagmo-monitor ng mga learners or nag-i-evaluate ng kanilang progress and achievement. Pagdating naman sa efficiency, so kailangan ay submitted a combination of at least 4 of the acceptable MOB. So kailangan natin makapag-submit ng at least 4 o combination of the 4 acceptable MOBs sa mga binigay natin kanina. And then sa timeliness naman ay kailangan ay within the 4 quarters area. So ito nilagay ko, picture lang ito ng portfolio ng mga bata. One ay formative or summative assessment tools with TOS and frequency of with identified less mastered skills. So nilagay ko lang din dito ay para sa quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So hindi ko din nilagay lahat ng subject para sa quarter 1. So pumili ako ng bawat subject para hindi naman ganun kapal. Okay, next is yung mga least learned competencies na aking ginawa. So ito ay para sa first quarter. Ayan. So second quarter up to fourth quarter. So nag-attach din ako ng root cause analysis. Next, objective number 12, communicated promptly and clearly the learner's needs, progress, and achievement to key stakeholders including parents or guardians. So ano mga MOBs para sa objective number 12? So sabi ito, at least 3 samples of corrected test papers of the same 3 learners in the same learning area with parents or signature and date of receipt. So ayan, so 3 samples of corrected test papers. So 3 lang ang hinihingi, so tig-isa lang bawat bata. So hindi naman ganun kadami hinihingi. And then minutes of PTA meetings or parent-teacher conferences in all quarters with proof of parents, guardians, attendance. So, yan, minutes of PTA meetings natin ginagawa. Report cards with parent, guardians, signature in all quarters supported by minutes of meeting also. Next is communication with parents, guardians using various modalities, anecdotal record, and other documents na support for objective number 12. Objective number 12, so sa quality, kailangan lang ulit natin maging consistently, frequently, occasionally doon sa mga isasubmit natin na MOBs related doon sa objective. Pagdating naman sa efficiency, so submitted a combination of at least 4 of the acceptable MOB. So 4 lang ang ating ipapasa doon sa mga binigay natin. Sa timeliness naman, so kailangan ay across the 4 quarters area ulit. So ito yung sample na test paper na nilagay ko. Sa test paper, so sabi doon ay 3 sampled lang every quarters. So para makaano tayo sa efficiency. And then 3 bata lang na sample ang kukuhaan natin. Ito naman yung PTA meetings, agenda, attendance, and minutes. So ayan, para sa hanggang 4th quarter. And then ito naman ay yung sample report card na may pirma up to 4th quarter. Ayan, so yun ang laman ng craft work, assessment, and reporting. Next, at ang pinakahuli sa lahat na KRA is KRA number 5, which is plus factor na may isa lang siyang objective. Objective niya ay objective number 13, so perform various related works, activities that contribute to the teaching learning process. So ano ang mga MOBs? Objective number 13. So certificate of recognition or participation, certificate of training, certificate of speakership, committee involvement, advisorship of co-curricular activities, book or journal authorship or co-authorship, coordinatorship or chairpersonship, coaching and mentoring learners in computation, mentoring pre-service teachers, and others. Kung meron ulit tayong pwedeng idagdag. Objective number 13, so ganun lang din ulit. So kailangan nating maging consistently, frequently, occasionally, perform various related work or activities that contribute to the teaching learning process. So may papakita natin dapat yan sa ating mga isasubmit na MOBs. Sa efficiency naman, so kailangan lang ay 4 ulit ang ating isasubmit na acceptable MOB. So hindi natin kailangan isubmit lahat ng nakalagay doon sa MOBs checklist natin. So una sa aking MOBs ay yan, mga certificate of trainings or participation. Next is certificate of recognition para sa speakership. Ito naman ay sa coordinatorship or chairperson. So nag-screenshot na lang sa Facebook kasi libre na tayo sa caption. So nag-screenshot ako sa Facebook para libre na rin sa caption. So during basic life support, orientation, ayan, trainings, ayan, so gulay yan sa paaralan, marami pa. Ito naman ay kasunod ay coaching and mentoring learners and computation, ayan, during our nutrition day. And our Mr. and Miss Kaniwan Elementary School.